Hey, how y'all doing? Okay, let's do it to it. Alrighty. Let's get on and see what we have for our next section of learning. Okay, let's get her going. Clear the board. I like when we're doing end games. It's always fun. It's something to learn. You can always learn from an end game. Let me see here. Make sure we got this right. Okay, we will make this into a study. And then we will read our next section inside of the chapter 6 winnable is the golden rule. Alright, let's put the players in so that if you would like to go over the game, I hope it's on the internet for you to go over. If it is, then you can go all the way through and see how the players actually implemented their ideas to get to where we are here. So that's worth it sometimes to go over the game to learn from it. Perfect from my perspective. Okie dokie, let's do it. The golden rule, that's the name of the section. There's a golden rule about converting an advantage that most non-masters don't appreciate. They don't appreciate it because they simply don't believe it. It is usually easier to win with a substantial positional advantage than with an equal substantial material advantage. So basically, what he's saying here, I'll read that again. It is usually easier to win with a substantial positional advantage than with an equal substantial material advantage. Sorry about pronouncing it. That pronounce is kind of funny. It's substantial. So basically, even if you're maybe you have a rook and a bishop versus a two rooks, if your position is better, a better position, you're going to win than even if you were the one with the two rooks. That's what they're trying to say is it doesn't matter about material sometimes, even if you have a better exchange. Amateurs, this is what Solstice Andrew Solstice says. Amateurs don't believe it because they integrate the significance of material. So amateurs are beginners, as I like to say, because are improvers. So I'm going to say improvers. And the improvers who want to improve at chess understand that material is important, but it's not everything, my friends. So you have to remember sometimes. A good example is the Great Gift. Remember, mate's the whole idea about chess. Checkmate is. So if you get checkmate, then that's the importance of chess. Of course, is to mate the king. It's if you have to sacrifice everything. I think it was Morphy had the opera game, and Morphy got down to a rook and a bishop, but he checkmated the earl and I forgot. I think it was the baron or maybe the count. They played in between the opera curtains were changing and the scenes were changing, and the inter between the of things. I forgot the name of it, but you get the point. And they played probably maybe a blitz game. Nobody really knows what time it was, but they got through it, and he won with a bishop and a rook. The earl and the count had like material galore, but they still lost. So that's a good example. After all they can see is the extra pawn. A positional advantage is harder to detect. As a result, they have difficult times believing the rule in positions like the following that we're going to be going over. What they're trying to say is that we we see that we're up material. We may be up a pawn, but that pawn might be a poison pawn that will actually basically ruin our position. And that does happen sometimes, like when the queen goes pawn grabbing, and then let's say black's queen goes pawn grabbing, and it goes and starts eating a lot of pawns, gets really healthy with pawns. You know what I mean? She gets a lot of with soldiers, but what we have is full development. If we checkmate the king, that's what they're talking about. The positional advantage is better than material advantage, because that queen, the black was up maybe 5 pawns, but if the king is dead or checkmated, then what's the point of having 5 extra pawns? You know, that's a really good example. I was thinking of one that happens sometimes. We get a little too greedy and we end up actually stretching our forces too much. Most players will try to solve this as white to play and win with calculation. Some will see that queen c7 for white looks good. Others will notice that black can save himself after queen c7, of course, with queen to e6, which attacks the rook. So what they're saying is, you're thinking, what is he talking about here, and then this move here? Yeah, the queen's attacking the rook, but you're attacking the queen, and it's just you have to be careful that you don't give any advantage or any counterplay to your opponent. We'll do the first move so that we can talk about this. So the first move for white is rook to e5, which is actually what I was thinking about. What they're talking about is if white tried c7 to attack the queen, and the queen would be like, oh right, yeah, I'm gonna take. This would be a big mistake, because rook c1, you c2, you'd think, oh goody. No, rook d5 or c5 and it's over. So you can't take. So that's why the move, we're just going to promote this here, e6 is actually the move that actually works for white. And so if you tried retreating back, the queen would just retreat to d7 again. Barricade the pawn and say, my friend, what have you really accomplished? Nothing. And so that's the idea of, you got to be sure with your moves. And that's why black, and then we're going to read a little bit further in here. So c7 looks good. Others will notice that black could save himself with, like what we talked about, queen so this right here, but black could save themselves with queen e6. And because d5 is a mistake here, d5 would be, or d7 would be a mistake here, because of queen takes d5, and now black is threatening checkmate. So more the merrier. Queen, if you queened here, which looks, oh yay, I queened, double question mark. Boom. Sorry about that, friend. Yep, you got extra material, but you got checkmated. So was that worth it? No. And many may conclude that the solution is easier because of, let me see here. Rook takes h5 potentially could be an idea. They think that winning a pawn, there is only one variation to look at, and it's g takes h5. Queen what? Let me see. G takes h. Queen takes h5. Where am I missing something? Well, wait. Oh, okay. My bad there. I think I overstepped here. It's right here. I need to get rid of this right here. Rook takes h5. This is the one we're looking at. And then g takes, queen takes. And this actually picks up a pawn. So like when king goes to g7, the queen would come to takes on e2. And the move is forcing check, and then king h1. But an experienced player is suspect of this. So an experienced player will say, this just doesn't feel that rook takes h5. Yes, you're up a pawn. It just doesn't feel winning. It doesn't feel winnable. And a player, and it is not the variation he doubts, but the evaluation that the experienced player doubts. You're up a pawn, but is that pawn enough? At the end, after king h1, white has no passed pawn anymore. So right here, after this here, white has no passed pawn. He does have an extra pawn, but it is located on the king side. If white does win, the how, remember we talked about that, promoting the h pawn will take a lot of moves. And we talked about the how last time. The how is an important factor in assessing whether a position is favorable enough, and simply whether you can imagine if it could be won, and evaluate it. So that's why he does how. He says the how is can you imagine to see if it's winnable. White does have a passed pawn, but it's going to take forever to get that passed pawn. And yes, you're up a pawn, but you lost your d6 passed pawn. You worked so hard. Why would you want to give it up like that? And so that's why White decided to look for other lines too. See, the idea when you start improving as chess players, you'll stop just calculating wasted lines that just waste your time and your energy, and you'll look at concepts. You'll say to yourself, the concept, I could win a pawn on h5 by rook takes h5, g takes h5, queen takes h5, check, and then I win the rook on e2. The queen wins my pawn. I'm up a pawn. Yes, I have a passed pawn, but how long is the game going to take me? Do I have enough time to do it? Is the evaluation winnable? Is it good for me? And then you also have one that queen c7, and then you see that doesn't work out because of queen e6, which saves the black. So you have to then come up with another idea. What can I do to potentially win the game? And then we notice that the king on h7 is really far away from our d6 pawn. You notice it's far, far away. It's like on the other, as I like to say, on the other side of the moon or the other side of the board. And so we could actually potentially trade off the e2 rook for our rook. And then our queen will be on e5 at that point. And even if the king tries to get to g7, we can go queen e7. And then if queen takes e7, the king can't get I'll show you what I'm talking about. If this here, let's say they take, we take, this is just a line I was looking at. Let's say here, 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 and there. There's no way for the king to get to the pawn in time. We made a plan based on the king being so far away from our passed pawn. We knew that we could evaluate that we were stronger and we had enough time to do this takes, king g8, queen e7, queen takes, too late for the king, we queen and win. The point, assume that white will break the blockade on d7 and then play queen e7. So this surprising, this move here is actually an exclam mark. We didn't even look at the book, so congratulations. We're actually improving. So this is a strong, strong move. So what white doesn't do, this is our line. What black doesn't do is trade, because black knows they evaluated the position. They looked at, I'm not going to just walk into a losing position. So black goes, you know what, my king's off to the side. I got to somehow get a position where I could get my king activated. But I also need to get my rook safe. And so what makes sense is rook d2. You didn't have to calculate much on that one because you know that 2 attackers versus 1 defender will win the pawn. And so this makes white have to use a move, and potentially if the rook goes to d5 again, the rook will take, the queen will take, and then the king can get in, and it's going to take white an extra move to get the queen to e7 or c7, and the king then can get in and potentially get in front of the pawn. Okay, Itoki. Yeah, black's best move was rook e2, allowing a better variation. Now we could actually, in theory, win this type of setup with rook takes e5 here. So we got to promote this to the main line. Surprisingly, this move's winning here. So this is a strong, strong move. Then we have to also look at if if white thinks about playing this here, this is actually a mistake. So don't get tricked into thinking you can pick up the queen here. This would have been a mistaken move. The queen just takes at this point. Queen takes. Queen takes. Rotates D. Rotates F. And then king h6. And a dead draw here. So white doesn't want to go down that line and head into a drawing line. So white plays rook takes h5. If of course g takes f is forced. This is a forcing line. Queen takes, check, and then king g8, and then queen to g5, check, and king f8. Queen takes d2. Now we have 2 passed pawns. The theory of 2 weaknesses will come into play, and we will be able to trade off our queen when the king gets somehow over here. We'll be able to trade them off, our queen for the pawn and the queen, and this pawn will promote down the board. It'll be too far away. And so what yeah, okay, why is this an easier win? It's not because white has 2 extra pawns. Rather, the one he'd have on rook takes h7. Oh no, rook takes h5 here. The one he has on rook takes h5, right here, what they were talking about. No matter. No, what matters most is that he kept the d pawn. So even though we got this here, It's not that we have two extra passed pawns. It matters that we kept our d6 pawn, because that d6 pawn is going to be a problem. Black's going to have to move his king over to handle getting the d6 pawn traded off with his queen, and we will, again, like what we said, how we talked about prior, is walk the h pawn down the board. No, so let's see. Okay, no. What matters most is that he keeps the d pawn. That means he can break the barricade or force a trade of queens. The how is much easier this time. The imagination. In fact, the fastest way to win in the first diagram is actually queen to d4. Surprisingly, there's a well, we can go over that in just a little bit, but we want to read the continuation down here. Note, what matters was a pass pawn. What mattered was a pass pawn. Not necessarily an extra pass pawn. Good defenders understand that too. Let's see how both white and black use the golden rule in the following example. But let's go back really quick. They're saying that potentially what also wins here is let me see, just trying to figure out, there's something to do with, they're saying that queen d4 actually would win here at this point. Queen d4. And then exclaim rook e5, and then rook e5. Would win, and it stops the whole idea about queen d4 exclam, why it's the better of the moves, is it stops black's idea of rook to d2 at that point. So let's go pull up another board. Okie dokie. Let's do it to it. This is Kramnik as white and Aronian as black, so these are two really strong players. So this is that's why it's very informative. I was looking forward to doing this with you. is to go over this. Gotta love it when you can do chess. I thank the Lord that He allows me to always be able to do that. Okie dokie. Let's see, black to move here. Okay. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna make it into a study. Oops. To go down through. Okay, time to put in. Excuse me. Let's turn that to a 6. And then we just change this to a Ronin. We change this to a different name. And then we're good to go. Let's make sure I have a Ronin spelled right. Yep, I do. We're looking at it from white's perspective, but we'll just turn it to look at it from black's perspective. It's fine. Either way works. Okay, White obviously threatens the e6, threatens bishop takes e6 pawn. His less obvious one is he dominates the c-file by the doubling of the rooks. Black can foil both threats with a gain of tempo and time with f6, black can. And then he can play rook c8 or rook c7, and that would stifle both of the ideas. So I'm going to have you stop right now. You are playing, my friends, as Aronian. So you get to be Aronian. Stop right now and see if you're watching this pre-recording. See if you can find the move that white played that's an exclam here. Or sorry, black played, not white. Sorry, black played. That is an exclam. Stop right now. Okay. Black played this move, rook c7 exclam. Congratulations if you saw that. Black, like what we're talking about, the reason I did this move, I wanted to show you what they were talking about. f6, bishop h6 at this point, because the other way you get forked, so you can't do that. And then you either have rook h7 to block that, or rook c8. You also, if you don't, you can retreat the bishop back to e3, or you can retreat the bishop back to d2. And then queen e4 to and then followed by just undermining after that. So with a positional, this is what they're saying. So with a positional, with a position, rather than material advantage, white has an easy how, and that's why black chose. With it, yeah. That's why black chose rook c7 exclam. Had to think there for a second, because he understood that after bishop takes, but we'll see, we're going to do what Kramnik played. So just think about, what do you think would be a good move here for Vladimir Kramnik? Okay, just stop right now. Look for a positional edge, okay? It doesn't always have to be, a takes, okay? I'll just give you a hint. It's not always a takes. So stop right now. If you're watching this after it's been recorded on Chess Cruncher TV on my YouTube account. Okay, perfect. Vladimir Kramnik played c6 exclam right back at him. Okay, the reason I did that is we were going to go over the line that we were looking at. If bishop takes e7, rook f c8, or rook f rook to e8, then there's two lines that could happen here. If this happens, bishop takes d6, rook takes, bishop takes, and then rook takes, check. This happens if here, and let's say bishop takes, rook takes, and the same idea happens as well. And now you're playing against two rooks versus two rooks and a bishop versus a queen and a bishop. It would be a total different game if white had a knight and a queen. They work much better together than just a bishop and a queen. Knights can play on both colors, where the bishop, the dark square bishop, would only be able to play. Oh, wait a second, I'm totally wrong. the king would have to come up here, and then, oh yeah, so this is actually winning for black, because he has two rooks for and a same thing here. Still, you're up material. Okay, yep, it's over at that point. So Vladimir Kramnik had to take a look at that, and most definitely he dismissed it. He has improved the power of his pieces, a positional gain for him. White has made a material gain, but after this, after his extra pawn means little, because wait a second, sorry, I had this wrong. I read the wrong spot. Pardon me on that. This is the c6. He threatens to take on a6, a much more valuable pawn, because white would likely be able to create a passed pawn on the a file. So the rook would like to take on a6, rook takes a6, and then Vlad would have two pawns on the queen side versus one. And so black replied with rook takes c6, d takes c6, and rook to c8. Once again, white can win a pawn with bishop takes e7, and then rook takes c6, and then queen to e4. And is that enough, though? You have to always ask yourself. We're going to be, we'll go over that line. Right now, it's white to move. It's Vladimir Kramnik. You now understand what matters most in this position from the last game. We talked that it was the d6 pawn in our last game. Holding that d6 pawn, it wasn't the h pawn. Excuse me. It wasn't the h pawn that mattered most. It was holding on to that d6 pawn and the h pawn that mattered the most. So with that idea in mind, stop right now and calculate over the on the board here. Oops, I think I need to enlarge it. 1 second. I need to enlarge this. I think this is kind of a smaller board. I apologize about that. Now with this in mind, so stop now, take a look, and come back if you'd like, or you can just continue watching. Okay, the idea that Vladimir Kramnik played was rook to c1, exclam. He realized that the pawn, the c6 pawn, was better. Hey, how you doing? Good morning. You realized that the c6 pawn was much better than the pawn than the e7 pawn. So it was totally better. And this would be more of a problem for Levon Aronian than just winning these two pawns here. And so that's why he played that. So we will now go back, and we're going to look at why. You probably asked the question, why you just win two pawns? Isn't that good? You know, yeah, it's good, but you really can't make a pawn because of this pawn chain here. It's not as good. So if you took there, rook takes c6, now that's gone. Queen e4, which is still a good move. It's an exclam move. It's a good move. So it's not that it's a bad move. Then the tactical point of queen c2. And then rook takes d6, exclam here. Rook takes d6, and then queen to a8 check. And it leaves white, it leaves black in a losing position here, because mate will actually end at this point right here. This is double question mark, and then of course queen takes is mate. It's over. So better on move 5 would have been queen c8 to hold the a8 pawn. I mean a8 square. Then rook takes, leaves white with another pawn up endgame, but it is very hard to win. Perhaps impossible against best defense. This explains why Vlad preferred in this scenario C1 exclam. The protecting the passed pawn is much stronger than the extra double pawn. So Levon tried e6 to not lose his e pawn, because now that the rook protects c6, his whole tactical idea, Levon's whole tactical idea, is basically over. There's not much that he can use anymore, so Levon has to waste a move to protect the e7 pawn. Bishop d2. Now the idea is an interesting knight bishop a5, with the idea of pushing c7 and then queen into e7. Just everything's just coming smashing through. Okay dokie. Okay. Queen d7 or c7 by Levon. If there were no queenside pawns, white would be able to break the blockade on c7 by means of queen a4 for white, and then bishop a5 and all that beautiful play. But it's going to be hard. But as he stands, he was able to keep the pressure, basically keep pushing with a4 exclam at this point. This is trying to break the, like what was just read to us here, or explained to us, was that if all these pawns here were gone, the queen would be able to break the blockade. But we have to get those pawns gone and then keep hold of the c6 pawn. Then d5 was played by black. A takes, and then queen b4. Rook at b8, queen a3, with the idea of bishop b4, and then bishop to these 2 points, bishop b4 and then bishop d6 with a skewer of the queen to the rook. Bishop d4, queen a6, that works now. Yeah, why not bishop f4 or f8? Bishop f8. I think the same idea happens with queen a6, and it's just not strong enough. This also, what eventually might happen is the bishop may actually, for white, go to c3 and then dominate the open a1 to h8. Yeah, it just in the Akitable, yeah. Oh yeah, that is true. Yeah, I like that. Yep, that's even better. It does block. It does, but Yeah, I guess that does, because if rook a8, bishop takes, rook takes, the blockade is breached at that point. Yeah, that would breach the blockade, wouldn't it? And then rook there, because you can't waste time with. You may, yeah, you'd have to do that, and then after that you'd have to put the rook would be in front there. That still would be a hard. This still would be hard to win. So I'm not sure. I'm thinking that potentially bishop f. Oops, not bishop f. Right here, bishop to e is actually better. So let's see what. Hold on, I gotta make sure I'm doing this right. Let's see, 9. Did I do this right? Let me see, 9 and a6. Okay, yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yep. All right. Let's keep this. That's why this was played, was to try to stop the blockade here, break the blockade. Yeah. Yeah, the idea is also, if the bishop tried to break the blockade now, oops, not that's blast color. If the bishop tried to break the blockade now, the bishop on d4 will actually move to b6 and then blunt that bishop. And so that's kind of the idea of, and then there's also this idea here, potentially, maybe later on, queen b6, yeah. Yep. That's why excuse me, that's why queen a6 was played. If you're wondering why queen a6, this allows now when the bishop comes, oops, no, that's a black, I keep forgetting that you gotta do it for, well, green for white, or white for white, and then dark black for black. Yeah, this here. Yeah, and then there you go. R, yeah, R, oops, R, you have these 2 points for white to infiltrate into, and you're still good. All's good. Okay, where did we leave off? Okay, queen a6, bishop e5, bishop e5, and then f4. That move's interesting. Just trying to figure out what. Oh, I get it. If he breaks the blockade, I get now. If this gets played here, the queen can actually move to queen to. Oh no, it can't do that. Queen to. I'm thinking queen e7 maybe. Oh wait, yeah, even better. Sorry, that's this right here. Queen c8. Queen c8's better. I have queen here. Then you have queen b6, and I'm thinking you have to play there. Really interesting position to say the least. Check. And then you could actually then the blockade really can't be broken at that point. Oops, this is better, yeah. Then rook c8, and there's no way to break the blockade for white anymore. Yeah, that makes sense now. Excuse me. One sec. Excuse me, just a tickle there. I'll get a drink really quick. 1 second. Okay, 11. Bishop d6 again. Bishop a5. And then, like what we talked about, queen c8 to try to trade off the queens here. White plays queen a7. This is an exclam idea. Now there's no bishop on for black. There's no bishop on e6 or sorry, e5. So rook a8. Queen e6, like what we just talked about. Thank you. Rook b8. Then queen to... That can't be. What am I missing here? There's something that I overlooked. Hold on. C8. Nope, we're still good here. Queen a. That's right. 6. Ah, that's the problem. This was I missed a line. Nope, that was right. But how could that be? I'm missing something here. What did I miss with F? Bishop d6. That can't be right. There's something that I... Okay, hold on. Let me just run through this really quick. There's something that went awry at this point. Let me see. Okay, takes. Just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. So a3. Oops, that's an exclam mark. I did forget an exclam, so that's a good thing we went back over that. d4, a6. So far, so good. e5, f4. Okay, perfect. Bishop d6. Okay. a5. Queen c there. A. Rook a8. Wow. Huh. Oh. Oh, that's the problem. This is it right here. It's bishop. Yeah. Yep. Yep, that's it. That's right. Yep, that was it. Okay, there we go. We got it now. We're on 100%. Sweet. Now rook here. Now we got it. I knew there was something that... Because Kramnik would not have put a piece on a square covered by a bishop. There we go. We're good. Now queen d4 here. And this is a really strong move by Vladimir Kramnik, because what the idea is, they want to do a mating idea. Oops. Bishop here, and then mate on these two squares would come to pass after the bishop moves to c3. So they're always looking for threats. They're target conscious, and a target could even be a square. Not, it doesn't have to just be a piece. It could be a square. So white will win because he can push the C pawn, the B6 are the B pawn. So what was played here by black was B4. The idea is if bishop C7 here, bishop takes C7, queen takes C7, and rook C5. And what's going to basically happen is we can actually cement our rook with B4, and then we have a target on B5 that we can win. And this is just going to be a bone in the throat for our opponent. And maybe if the king somehow nimbly, kind of subtly gets over to D6, our queen can infiltrate into F6 and then start gobbling material there too. So it's not totally winnable at this point, but I think white has a tremendous advantage here. Queen B6. Wait, that can't be right. What am I missing here? Before C7. That's it. C7. White would win after that. So queen C7. Rook A8. Rook A8 to attack the bishop. Queen to B6. That attacks black's bishop. So black's bishop's under fire now. Okay, be blessed. Bye-bye. Thank you for stopping by. I posted some new lessons or new videos on Chess Cruncher TV, so if you wanted to stop off and see that. If you wanted to stop off and see that, I posted another 10 new ones. You're more than merry to do that. Okay, hey there. Okay, B6. Bishop F8 here. And then the bishop just takes on B4. So let's go back and take a look to see what potentially black could try. Black could try rook at B7. Then you have queen F6. And remember this pawn that we talked about that's weak? There we go. That really puts a little bit of now that pawn is really vulnerable. And also you have two things that could end up being a problem for white. Queen D8 and queen takes F7. So those 2 points are really vulnerable. Bishop takes C8, C7, and then queen to E5. Bishop, if bishop takes our bishop, then rook takes C7. King has to go up, and then pawn takes bishop, and now we're up a whole minor piece, and we're winning here. This rook and this bishop will outmaneuver and pick up this B4 pawn. Eventually that will happen. Or what we may even do is trade off both rooks, get into a bishop endgame, and then the bishop will come back and target B4. So probably rook C7 after whatever black moves. Rook C7 would be a good move. Trying to take scope on on that. And so that, and then black would be in total defensive mode at that point. So this, after taking here, bishop takes, queen takes, queen e8 was played here, and Vladimir Aronian resigned here. Yeah. So then the queen would just come into b2, and this, it actually stopped here at this point. So I'll just put a white is black is, no, white's winning here. Oops, not there. Yeah, white is winning. That's right. Beautiful. Okay, let's see how we're doing on our time. Let me see. Do we have enough time for another one? Well, not really. May just cut it off early here. And then we'll do a quick little wrap up on this. Okay, because we went over, there was a lot that we learned here. Let's go back and we're going to talk just a second about what we learned here. We learned about the golden rule inside of chapter 6, Winnable. A chapter is called Winnable, but the section that we're in is a golden rule. And there's a golden rule about converting an advantage that most non-masters don't appreciate. They don't appreciate it because they simply don't believe it. It is usually easier to win a substantial positional advantage than with an equal substantial material advantage. So if you have like equal material, and potentially like what we talked about, if in our prior game back here, we'll pull that game up really quick and we'll just take a quick glance at it right here. If we had played this idea here, and then this is what they were talking about, this would be harder to win for white than just playing, and then this right here would not be a good move either. So we have to, I think I need to, one second, gotta make sure I do the other one, the main line. Hold on. Hold on. Okay, D2. Did I forget a lot? Did I forget to put this move in? Hold on, what did I? Huh. No, okay, E5 is the move. There we go. This is the move here. Hold on, I have to promote this to the main line. Gotcha. Okay, there. You can actually go to business law, and you can click on my profile, and they're open for you to go down if you look at. I'll 1 second. Let me. Oops. I'll do that just before we log off. Okay, I'll put that in there for you guys. I'll put that in there for you to go over just before we log off, but somehow I forgot to make this the main variation. This is actually what was played in the game for white here. And so what we've learned is that an this actually advantage is now better for white, because white didn't have to give up the extra pawn here. By saving the d6 pawn, white was able to convert the as the golden rule says, was able to convert I wanted to make sure I get this right, a positional advantage rather than equal material advantage. This back here would have been an equal material advantage. Yes, you're up a pawn, but that one pawn would take forever to get to the other side of the board. But by holding on to the pawn, by just waiting, is better. There's also a even better move that Andrew Soltis said was even better than that, and the move was actually Queen D1. Queen D1 actually wins on the spot because it stops Rook D2. So that was one thing that we talked about, and then the Vladimir Kramnik one that we just went over, because you got to sometimes do a summary on these so that you can get them integrated into your understanding. This move here, I got to flip the board so we can look at it from Black's perspective. So remember to flip the board so you can look at it from Black's perspective. This idea here, if we go all the way back, let me see, where was that? This right here, we were looking at F6, and then after all this, after all the trades, it still wouldn't be good enough for white. And we have seen that we didn't want this. If white had allowed this to happen, this would not be winning at this point. It's winning for Black at this point. So we have to gotta always be on the lookout. I guess what they're trying to say is for positional advantages. Okay, let me go to the studies really quick. Excuse me. A little tickle. I think thinking, let me see, make sure that this yeah, thinking that this is a copy, and then I'm thinking this might be the thing here. I'm not exactly sure. Let me make sure. Yeah, there we go. There's the link. Okay, so, and then we'll just we'll end on this here, because we'll just go through it really efficiently. Hold on. Well, let's go through it one more time, because it's always good to take a look at. Oops, I need to undo this. Just take a look at what the ideas are, and then I'll say adieu on this. Goodbye. There. And then now this with Queen B7, it's over. Okay, do you have any questions before I log off? And then tomorrow, it's actually a good spot to stop, because we're at positional, not material. That's the next section. Do you have any ideas that? Okay, perfect. I wanted to thank you all for participating, logging on. You know what? Sometimes one of the hardest things to do is to basically, it's not, I don't want to say study, but take time away from playing chess games. I know that they're fun to do, but I remember what International Master Andrew Martin said, that when a player or a student wants to improve, he found out that they switch from 90% or how much ever they're playing percentage. It may not be 90%, but if you do play 90%, they'll switch 90% study. Instead of 90% playing and 10% study, they'll switch to 90% study, 10% play. It's not like you can't play. It's just you have to make sure that you constantly learn what you're doing, and then what you do is after you've simulated that into your understanding, then you can go out and maybe do a 15-minute to a 20-minute game. Because my Grandmaster teacher taught me that it's vital to not do those 3 to 5 minute games, because of our 1 minute games are now they have 30-second games, and those are like blitz lightning ones, really really fast ones. I think it's called Hyper Blitz if I'm not mistaken. But okay, back to what I was saying is this: that you need to learn that, because my Grandmaster teacher told me it's based on the 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes. It's based on I'm trying to think. 1 second. Oh, instinct. That's what I was trying to think about. And my brain's going 100 miles an hour, and they're trying to explain to you that it's vital to study, really really vital. That's why it's important to receive the Lord Jesus as Lord and Savior of your life as well, because we have to decide what we're going to do one day with the Lord Jesus. And we also have to remember what Bruce Lee said. Bruce Lee said that you need to take what you know, so take what you learned, be able to apply it. Sometimes you can go and play it over the board, or like I said, a 15-minute or above would be preferable, so that you can practice your ideas that you implemented and learn in the learning process. And then when you feel like you have more of an instinct on what a positional advantage looks like, the golden rule, all the stuff that we're going over, the how, then you can go into a 5 to 3 minute game type of thing and then play there. But make sure that you have a good basis of understanding before you do that. That's why I remember what Tom Thumb Thumb said to Tango, that you take what you know, you're able to apply it. No, sorry, not that. You have to treasure your victories, learn from your losses, remember the mistakes do not define you. That's how, and it's how you handle the mistake that defines you as a chess player and a person in general. So you have to remember that. And then that's why the Chess Cruncher motto is in place of hanging, Team Chess Cruncher motto, hanging up your coats, hanging up your hat, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does, and that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus. As I say, God bless, and I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, and evening, and Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. And we'll keep pushing forward and constantly learning and improving. And we always have to remember, we talk about this, what Hannibal Smith said, Colonel Hannibal Smith on the A team. Even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. So that's what we're talking about. Even inside of a position in Vladimir Kramnik as white, Ronian as black, that there's always a plan. And we just learned that to win in that game was all about that C7 or C6 pawn. By holding it, Vladimir Kramnik was able to work around that and win. And so just keep that in mind when you look at winning material, even if you're a pawn up. Is that pawn worth it? And is it better to take a couple moves, hold on to the past pawn you already have, and then emphasize that winning a material later? Okay, 2 thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed. I pray that you take what you know. And again, thank you for logging on. If you like what you see, click follow to join us. And I have a YouTube, Chess Cruncher TV. If you want to subscribe and take a look at all the videos that we're going over. I try to keep up on the posting, so I apologize if I'm a little bit laggy on that. So, but enjoy the new ones that have just come out. Okay, 2 thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed. I will see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. And keep studying and having fun. Bye-bye.